Hello and welcome to the studio. My name is Roger Maida, driver of the small privateer racing team known as StudioVRM.Racing. I also happen to be the voice and the hands of all the videos that you see on this channel, so for those of you who haven't met me in person, well, surprise face reveal. Sorry about the looks. Working with what I got here. Anyway, I wanted to share some words of advice with all of you whose passions lie in competitive sports. Specifically, this advice is for those of you who are stuck in a losing streak or have just endured a really bad loss. So bad that you're now thinking about quitting the sport that you love. And to illustrate what I'm talking about, I'm going to tell you the story about my weekend at the 2021 SCCA Lightning Challenge, where I had the worst racing experience I've had in a very long time. Now, for those of you who follow this channel or the Racing Secrets blog at StudioVRM.net, you'll know that we are a small team. We have no manufacturer support, we have a modest number of sponsors, and most of all, we have very little crew. And that means, in addition to driving, I wrench on the cars, design and plan upgrades, do track testing, and rely on a very small group of talented people to get expert help in very specific areas. Things like engine development. And for those of you who have been following, you'll also know that the Studio VRM Prelude race car had a major engine failure back in late 2019. It was basically due to an issue where the aerodynamics created so much cornering grip that all the oil in the engine sloshed out of the oil pan and the bottom of the motor basically ate itself. And as interesting as that sounds, it was a very expensive mistake. And since then, we've been working hard to get the car back on track. Now, our engine builder Robert Oliver spent hundreds of hours assembling our new motor. We left no stone unturned when it came to parts. We made a lot of tweaks to the chassis, got several sets of brand new tires. And it wasn't just him, it was hundreds of hours of work from many people and thousands of dollars out of my own pocket. We did a handful of test days at the end of last year and made sure that everything was working the way that we wanted. And as a driver, I've been training hard away from the spotlight to make sure that I was fit and ready to give the car the return that it deserved when it finally got back to the track. So with everything set up and ready to go, we entered our local SCCA region's Lightning Challenge race event. It was a 3-day race weekend with the fastest club racers from the Mid-Atlantic coming in to show exactly what they could do. For us, this past weekend's race was supposed to be the culmination of everybody's hard work. It was a chance to reward everyone who helped me over the past year with a trophy, a win, some good war stories that we could laugh and share. And it was all looking good on the morning of. The car passed tech inspection without any real issues. One of the tech inspectors thought our rear wing might be a little too far back according to the rules of the class, but they brought out the plumb bob and measured it and gave us the okay to race. Morning prep went all well, new tires on, everything checked out, ready to go, and it was all set up to go out on track for the first track session of the weekend. It took less than 2 corners and about 20 seconds for everything to start going wrong. In the first session, we discovered that the whole rear end of the car would shake violently every time you went down the straight. Like, when I say violently, I mean violently. It felt like it was going to throw us off the road. I had no clue what was happening, especially since I personally checked out all the suspension components and did an alignment just the week before we came to the track. The whole thing was so confusing, I actually got lost coming back into the paddock and went down and fenced off escape road instead of pit lane. Kind of like Kimi Räikkönen in Interlagos, you know, without the talent and the money. You know, went back into the paddock, started checking everything out, and found 2 loose lug nuts on one wheel. That could do it. So we tightened it all up and went right back out. And the problem is even worse. Not only is the car wanting to throw itself off the track, it's also affecting the brakes. The pedal is going right to the floor every time I press it. It is terrifying. I go out for, I don't even think I completed an entire lap. Just came right back in, put the car in the air, and just started tearing into it. By this time, we're totally clueless. We're just throwing everything we have at it, and, you know, bleed all the air out of the brakes, inspect the tires, look at the suspension again, retighten everything. Not really finding anything that looks loose or worn out that would cause this kind of thing. The only possible thing that we can think of is that maybe one of the new tires that we put on has a broken belt. It's pretty rare on a track car, but it does happen, and it would cause this kind of shimmying and shaking. So we installed the only other set of tires that we had that day, which was a set of Hoosier rain tires. And these things are proper monsoon rain tires. They look like something that you put on your ATV when you go mudding, and the compound is so soft that you can make a dent in it with your fingernails. It's fantastic in the wet, lightning fast, but it's way too soft and squishy to be used in the dry. Realistically, we wouldn't be able to race on these, but maybe if the tires were the problem, putting the spare set on would help us rule things out. So in the third session, we go out and see if that's it, and lo and behold, the issue seems to have gone away. Great! Now, I can't do very many laps on these tires, and I certainly can't race on them. But I do happen to have another mounted set of slicks at home, which is about 2 hours away. So if this was the problem, run home overnight, get the set of dry tires, come back, put those on in the morning, and maybe go out and fix that the following day. So I called the day a little early, hopped in my FJ Cruiser tow vehicle, and drove back home. Now, the FJ Cruiser is not a big SUV. I don't live on a farm or a huge garage. I live in a little residential neighborhood, so doesn't really have enough room inside to fit 4 17-inch wheels with tires on them. So we strapped them to the roof and drive back, at slow speeds, Overlander style. People on the turnpike probably wondering what the heck is going on with this car, but I don't care. This will help me race on Saturday. So Saturday morning, 2 of my teammates and the closest racing friends I have meet me at the track, and they help me swap the car to the spare set of slicks that I brought home, and for good measure bleed the brakes again to get all the air out of them, make sure that it's going to be nice and stiff and that's not going to be as scary as it was yesterday. Then just go out into the Saturday practice session and hope for the best. I think it took all of 3 laps before they showed me the meatball flag. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, the meatball flag looks like this, and they show it to the cars that have a mechanical problem. And usually, if they're flagging you down in a race practice, it is something serious. It turns out that the car is smoking down every single straight, and not a little bit of smoke, I mean plumes, coming from somewhere where it honestly shouldn't. It's not even coming out of the exhaust, just coming out from somewhere under the car. So, obviously, cause for concern, go right back into the paddock, look under the engine bay, and find that there is oil covering the entire left-hand side of the engine bay. From what it looked like the oil dipstick had popped out and it sprayed engine oil everywhere. To make matters worse, even with this different kind of slicks, the car is still shaking and shimmying. Not nearly as bad as with the first tires, but still bad enough that we realistically can't race. And just for good measure, we check the oil catch cans in the side of the engine bay. They pick up extra oil that gets blown out of the motor, and they are full. They have an entire, half quart of engine oil in them from 5 laps. That's not normal, to say the least. So naturally at this point, I'm just baffled and thoroughly frustrated. We are tearing into the car, trying to figure out why the oil dipstick would just pop out. That's not a normal thing to happen. Charlie Greenhouse, the VSR racing team, a friend and an experienced racer, comes over and offers some help. He helps mop down the oil and suggests that I go out for 2 flying laps in the qualifying session and just come right back in. It wouldn't be fast enough to set a time, but maybe it'll be good enough to pinpoint the oil leak. And it's pretty good advice. So I start prepping the rest of the car and do exactly that. And as I'm going through and doing that, he goes off and starts talking to my neighbor. And I overhear him basically talking behind my back to the friendly racers who are parked next to us, guys that I don't really know, cracking jokes about, how Roger just likes to work on his car and how I'm just not good at this racing thing and never really was. I bet he thought it was some lighthearted ribbing, but in that moment, it felt like I was having daggers stabbed through my heart. But being angry doesn't fix anything, so do exactly as planned. So we do 2 laps just to see if we can pinpoint the issue and come back in. And it looks like the plan worked. The oil's coming from under the oil dipstick tube. It's good, but now that we know where to look, it's weird, because that's normally not where you see an oil leak, but that's fine. We'll figure it out. But now a new problem. The AccuSump oil accumulator that we put in, it's an emergency oil supply system in case we ever have a problem like we had last in 2019. This thing is now leaking like a sieve. There is oil everywhere on the floor. It's coming off from under the car, and it is horrific and nasty and frankly dangerous. And we don't have any spare parts or really anything to fix that. And of course, as all this is going on, one of my friends who traveled 2 states in about 3 hours to get here is starting to get heat stroke from the summer heat. It felt like everything was coming apart. Now, it took months of preparation to get here. Thousands of dollars. And so many late hours that I don't even want to think about it. And now we're having all these mystery issues that we didn't even imagine could happen. And I was angry. I was frustrated. But being angry doesn't fix cars, and with no idea what was going on and no way to work around them, I had to withdraw the car. There would be no racing for me this weekend. But maybe there was something that I could salvage. So instead, I decided to take over as crew chief for my friend's car, the Project CRX Honda CRX Racer. You may have seen it on our channel, the little yellow car, and he was doing pretty well. We had just gone over the car over the winter and finally gotten it to a state where it was both fast and competitive and easy to drive, and looked like this would be our most promising race ever. So Sunday came around and, there was plenty of mechanical work to do, so at first I thought I was being pretty useful. The 10-year-old alternator in the car fried after the morning session, so, ran out, changed it out, got that up and running, inspected the brake pads and found that one of them had just completely fallen apart. The backing delaminated from the rest of the pad and came out in 3 pieces. So we changed that before, something bad happened. And the Project CRX lead driver, my friend and teammate Martin Schwartz, was very grateful for the help. And then later in the afternoon, as everything was going really well, he asked me for help with his tire strategy. Martin had done really well during Saturday qualifying, and in the Sunday morning race, he had gotten a podium. And he wanted my advice on whether we should switch tires for the second feature race. We had 2 sets on hand for that day. Up to that point in the day, we were running a weird mix and match set. It had medium compound slicks in the front and soft compound slicks in the back. And the other set was just mediums on all 4 corners. The soft compound tires provide more grip, and theoretically, they would let Martin push the tail-happy CRX harder in the corners, which is exactly what he needed to do if he was going to try to press for a win in this all-important second race. So I looked back at the data, the feedback that he had on the car, looked back at the in-car video footage, and told him, yeah, we should stay on this mix set with the softer rear tires. Well, Sunday afternoon came around, the feature race started, and it took maybe a lap before I realized I had made the wrong call. The soft sticky rubber that worked fine in the first race was causing massive understeer, meaning the car just didn't handle well and wasn't turning into the corners. And it was so bad that I could see it from the paddock. Now, Martin had to wrestle with this while losing places left and right for an entire 20-lap feature race in, I think it was something like 97-degree heat at the time. By some miracle, he was able to salvage a 4th place, but he was not having fun. Basically, not only was my own non-race weekend a disaster, I screwed up my teammates' race as well. Now, Martin played it off and acted like he was pretty happy that he had the pace to defend 4th place. Not a bad result, but I still felt terrible. I mean, all in all, this was the worst weekend I've ever had at the track. Now, we're talking almost a year of preparation on the car. And not just by me, by my engine guy, by the people who built some of the custom-built parts who put it on. Some of the guys who came over and helped me align and work on the car late nights on weekdays just to get it ready. Have these 4 mystery mechanical issues, some of which I have no idea what caused them. I'm getting ribbed for it behind my back by someone that I had always considered a friend and honestly looked up to. Between entry fees, fuel costs, hotel, food, I probably spent about $1,300 US, all of which has now gone to waste. And then to top it all off, I screwed up somebody else's race. But most importantly, I disappointed a lot of people. Friends, supporters, fans of our site, and on social media who were finally looking forward to us getting a good result. So, naturally, when I was driving home that day, I honestly felt like packing everything up, just selling it all off to the first taker on Facebook Marketplace and just walking away from racing right there and then. Now, in situations like this, there is something that you have to do, preferably in a quiet room, possibly with a good strong drink in hand. Let's sit down, close your eyes, and ask yourself, do you really love this sport? Look, competitive sports are by their very nature hard. They get harder and more expensive the better you are. If you sit down, think about what you do, think about all the time and the money and everything that you spend on it, weigh the pros and cons, and realize that you'd rather be doing something else with your precious free time, that's okay. There's no shame in closing a chapter in your life and opening a new one. I'm sure you'll still have a lot of amazing stories of when you used to be a successful athlete or hard-charging sportsman to your friends and family. So later that night, I asked myself that very question. And you know what? I found out that I still do love racing. I love every part of it, including the dirty, greasy wrenching, the troubleshooting of mystery issues, staying up till midnight experimenting with this and that, and then staying up till 3 a.m. making videos and writing articles about the cool new thing I found while experimenting with something in the garage. And most of all, I love taking all that to the track and putting it up in heated competition by racing wheel-to-wheel, head-to-head against the best racers around. Despite everything that's happened in the past year and this, frankly, depressing weekend, I still love it. And at the end of the day, I don't want to do anything else. So it's about midnight now as I film this, and as soon as I'm done, I'm going to go to my garage. I'm going to put the StudioVRM Prelude back on jack stands, start taking apart the suspension to find this mystery wobble, and tear into the oiling system to figure out why there's so much oil in so many places where it shouldn't be. And I'm going to be doing it with a smile on my face, because I know it's just part of doing what I love. So the point is, for those of you who just had the worst loss of your competitive career, or are on a massive losing streak, and are thinking about walking away from your favorite thing to do, sit down and ask yourself whether you still love it. And if you do decide that you still love what you do, remember 2 things. First, what you do is important. It's not just a game, not just a hobby. This is your passion. It might even be the thing that you enjoy most about life. So when you're troubleshooting problems in your game or you're grinding at the gym to get the results that you need, savor that time. Remember, it's part of what you enjoy most. Second, remember, as you're sitting there, practicing, training, grinding away, that every minute that you spend doing this is making you better than your competition. One day, you're going to show up at an event, a match, a race. You're going to put your head down. You're going to put your heart and soul into it like you always do. And then at the end of the day, you're going to look up and realize that you won. And it will be the happiest moment of your life. And I'm not just making this up either, because this has happened to me. A lot of people don't know this, but 10 years ago, I was a slow backmarker racer, constantly finishing a distant last. I was a pretty careless mechanic too. Experienced enough, but a little too cautious and still making a lot of dumb mistakes. And as a result, I was getting patronizing comments all the time from everybody who just didn't think I knew what I was doing. At one point, it just all got so bad that I thought about hanging up my helmet, selling off all my tools, and just quit having to do anything with cars. When that happened, I sat down in a quiet room with nobody around and asked myself whether I still loved racing as much as I did when I first started. And just like today, I realized that the answer was a resounding yes. So the very next evening, I went back into the garage and got back to work, spending the weeks and months slowly improving the car and my own driving, and I just kept at it, going to races and events, racing my heart out every time I got onto the track. At first, I was still finishing last, but then I started doing a little better, then a little better, then a little better. Until one rainy autumn day, I showed up to a race at a soaking wet Summit Point Raceway. And I did my usual thing. Put my gear on, prep the car, get out there, drive my heart out, like I always did. And, the car felt good. I was enjoying it. It didn't feel like I was doing anything special or out of the ordinary. But when the checkered flag flew, and I came back into pit lane, someone stopped me, right in the middle of pit lane, pulls me aside, comes over, shakes my hand. Apparently, I was in first place by miles. The gentleman who came over told me that I had passed every single car on track at least once. I lapped them. And I was about to put the back of the field down 2 laps. It was the most dominant win that the guy had seen in the rain in years. And he was so excited about it that he had to congratulate me personally. Now, obviously, that's not what's happening for me right this second. But as long as I keep doing what I love, giving it the same passion and dedication as I have all these years, I know it will happen again soon. And guess what? It'll happen for you too. Remember that. In any case, that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. I'm headed back to the garage now. And then after that, I will see you at the track.